Okay, in this tutorial we're going to set some gravity settings on our object character so that we can test to see whether or not he is in the air, and if he is so, let him fall back down to earth. So to do this we're going to obviously open up our object character, and the first thing we need to do is add a step event. Now the reason we're going to add a step event is that because this type of event, it runs for every frame in your game. So for example, if your game was running at 30 frames per second, the step event will keep running 30 times in 1 second. So it keeps checking to see, in this case, whether or not there is a space below him to fall into, and as soon as there is, he will fall down back to earth. Okay, so we'll add an event. This will be the step event, and we'll just normal step here. And what we first want to do within this event is check to see whether or not the position below him is free. So we need to go into our control tab, and we've asked a question, check to see if the position below him is empty. Now of course we're not worried about the X here, we're more worried about the Y. So the first thing we'll do is check to see whether or not 1 pixel below him on the y-axis is empty, and we'll also make that relative. Now if that position below him, 1 pixel, is empty, we want to set the gravity. Now to set the gravity we need to go back into the Move tab, and it's this little blue down arrow here. You can see when I roll over it says Set Gravity. So I bring that one in, and here what we're essentially saying is that if the position is free, 1 pixel below him, then start pulling him down towards the floor in this case. So we need to say what direction we want him to fall in. Now the direction is actually 270 degrees. If we think back to our move speed variable, we start our degrees at x, so to the right of x is 0, and then we follow it 360 degrees round anti-clockwise, so downwards would be 270. And then we're going to set our gravity as 0.5. Now here we don't need to make this relative, but we do click OK. Now we need to also add into this if statement, well, this is what will happen if the collision is free, but what do we want to happen if the collision is not free? So he's actually stood on something. In order to do this, we go back into our control tab and we introduce an else part statement. So we've got if this is true, do this, and if it's not, we're essentially saying else, do something else. So in this case we're going to set the gravity to 0. Okay, so we don't do anything basically here. I don't need to make it relative, so we click OK. So just have a recap on that. Step event, step event, it will keep checking constantly in the game to see whether or not the position below, 1 pixel below our Mario object, is free. If it is, bring him back down to earth at 270 degrees at speed essentially of 0.5. But if it's not and he's actually stood on a solid object, then just leave the gravity to 0, so he just stays still. Now what we could do here is just see this working by testing our game, but of course if you think to our room, he's actually stood on the floor, so we need to just delete him, select him again and put him up in the air somewhere so we can actually see him fall down. And I wonder if you can guess what will happen towards the bottom here when I press play. So watch carefully. There he goes. Oops, he falls right through our wall, and that's of course because we haven't said stop when he hits the wall. So we'll just quickly add that into our object Mario. And this is obviously a collision event, so we add another event. On collision with the wall, we want to do something. Now, we could here, I suppose, just set the vertical speed to 0, but actually we're just going to first of all add a move to contact here, and we're going to type in the direction, the word direction, and this is setting a variable on the object that will store the direction that he is currently moving in, because he might not be moving in exactly a vertical or horizontal direction. And we're going to put a maximum here of 12 against solid objects, and we're going to click OK. And once it's tested this, then we are going to set our vertical speed to 0. Okay, so if I test our game now, what should happen is when he actually is moving downwards and collides with the wall, he will stop. Now, of course, in order to get him up in the air in the first place, we need to introduce jumping, and you can do that in the next tutorial.